Hi, I'm Pat Miller, and I'm here at the Westmont Public Library to talk about winter sowing. You may or may not have heard of this. It is a way of starting seeds in the winter for planting in the spring. It's a wonderful concept, very economical, and it allows seeds to use their own genetics to decide when it's the best time to germinate. So winter sowing can begin as early as the winter solstice, which is December 21st. The seeds that we would sow at that time are the hardy natives, and then as we get into the more and more tender plants, we would plant those earlier or later and later in the spring. So how does it work? Winter sowing works by placing seeds in soil in what we call mini greenhouses, which we make. And the heat and cold breaks the dormancy of the seed. So the seeds will germinate when their genetics say it is time. So some seeds may sit there for a month or two. Others may germinate very quickly, depending on that seed's genetics. What I like about winter sowing is that it is so low cost, it is so easy, and I have a much greater selection of plants to choose from than if I go to a store and buy the seedling. Because when you look at seed packets, there are so many different kinds of seeds that are available that aren't available when you buy a plant. So let's get started. What do we need to do winter sowing? Number one, we need some kind of a container. I'm quite partial to the milk carton, and I'll explain why in a minute. Other containers could be these plastic shells, clam shells. If you have a roast, you could use something like that. These work okay, however, they don't have a great amount of headroom. This has no headroom, and again, this has some headroom. Ideally, we would like 4 inches of soil and 4 inches of headroom. So not a lot can offer that, except for our great gallon milk jug. Also, you can get these for free. If you don't drink milk, I'm sure many of your neighbors do. You can use either milk or water. They have to be translucent enough that you can see your hand through the plastic, so they cannot be opaque. They should not have held any kind of a chemical or toxic substance. Simply rinse them out quite well. Then we want to drill holes in the bottom so that there is drainage. Now with a milk carton, you don't need to drill any holes in the top because we already have our hole here. So you just take the lid off, toss it away, and you are set to go. What type of soil should we use for this project? This is probably the only place where I feel use the best you could afford. So we want to use what is called potting soil, potting mix. Not garden soil, not topsoil, not compost, not manure, but potting soil. Potting soil has been developed to grow things in this medium in a small space. It has the right amount of nutrients, and it has the right amount of drainage, and it's fairly sterile, which is good. So this is the one place you really need to focus on quality, which is the potting soil. So you're going to take a container, and you're going to fill it with the potting soil, approximately 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches deep. There are 2 ways to wet the soil. One is you can wet it, like really mix it up with water beforehand and then put the soil in. Another way is to put the soil into the container and then put it inside of a bucket of water and let the water go up through osmosis. This is a very slow method. It works well, but I will tell you it's very slow. One other way, which I like to use, is to put the soil in, and then with a watering can with this type of end so that it's very gentle, and just wet the soil, Then I would sprinkle the seeds. Sometimes you need to get them down just a little bit so you can push them down. So we would put the seeds in. If they need to be pushed down a bit, you can do that with a chopstick, your finger, and then I water it one more time very gently just to make sure that the seeds have a good contact with the soil. Close it up. Using a hole punch, I've simply punched a hole in the top and the bottom, and this is to close it up. We want to create the effect of a greenhouse. This does not have to be sealed tight. We want air to get in, we want snow to get in, water to get in, sun to get in. So we simply want it to hold some of the moisture. Why would we bother with this? Why not put seeds in the soil in the spring? Good point. There are many advantages to winter sowing. Number one is that it's very inexpensive and it's time saving. Number two, your seeds are growing outside, which is where they're ultimately going to be growing. Number three, the seeds are hardier, the plants are hardier than what you've started either inside or even possibly purchased at a store. The plants that are winter sown are more resistant to cold. They tend to hold up better during the dry heat of the summer. And again, we have a much wider selection of seeds. So winter sowing, as I said, can start as early as the winter solstice, December 21st. And you can continue doing it until the nights begin to really warm up. So really through April, you can continue to sow seeds in the pots. So we have our containers, we have our potting soil, we have a watering device of some sort that has a nice, gentle way of distributing the water. Then marking your containers. So this is really, really important because nothing is more frustrating than to see all sorts of little green things coming up and having no idea what they are. Everyone forgets. That's human nature. So you can do one of two things. You can write on here what you've put in here, or I like the method of numbering, and I'll explain why in just 1 second. There's also an advantage of using what's called a paint pen or a paint marker, which is actual paint. The Sharpie, which is a permanent marker, is not permanent outside. It fades. By the end of the season, you will not be able to read it any longer. So it's worth investing in a paint pen. They're under $3 and they last quite a while. So I like the numbering system for several reasons. One is that if I number my containers, I will make a chart. And the chart, I put the number of the container, the date that I put the seeds in, and what is inside. So when something starts to germinate, I can simply look at my chart and know what it is when I planted it. The other advantage is that I made some effort to obviously acquire all these milk cartons, and I don't really need to replace them every single year. So I can reuse the milk cartons from year to year to year. If they're numbered, it won't matter what was in them the year before. All I need to know is the number. And all you can do is like take a piece of rope or a pole and just stack them on top of each other for the winter, and you're good to go the next spring. Square tends to store a lot better than round. Garden gloves are if you like to keep your hands clean. I always keep them out and I somehow never put them on. I like getting my hands in the dirt, but of course, any kind of glove, plastic glove, whatever. A spray bottle is helpful because if you see a container drying out, if you don't want to actually give it a full shout of water from a watering can, you can simply just wet it with a spray, very gentle. So that's handy to have around. To cut open the container, I like to use a very sharp knife, and I will just go in with the blade away from me and make a hole. And then I will take a pair of scissors and I will just cut it out. If you like to be fastidious and neat, you can measure it and make a nice line. As you can see on some of mine, I did and I didn't, because I'm not so particular. It doesn't matter. Keep this as deep as possible. Again, take your hole punch and punch a hole in the top and the bottom so that you can tie this together. And then there are multiple ways to make the drain holes. If you have a drill, that I find is the easiest. I put this actually on top of an empty box, and then I will drill down to make the holes. Another way would be to take a screwdriver or any kind of a sharp object. Heating it up really helps, and then you just literally punch down and make the holes with that. You could use a little knife, you could use a screwdriver, you could use a sharp pointing object, but you do need to have the drainage holes. Very, very crucial, because you do not want your seeds to sit in water. Your seed packet is a wealth of information. On the back will give you so many details that maybe you've never noticed before. But this will talk about, first of all, it should give you the botanic name. So, okay, this is squash. Squash is very generic. But we want to know what variety it is. Second of all, we will need to know how deep to plant this seed. The general rule is you plant a seed twice as deep as it is large. Then it will also tell you how many days it will take to germination. In winter sowing, obviously this varies because of the outside temperature, but in ideal circumstances, the seed will germinate in 8 to 10 days. Then it will tell you how far apart to put them. I suggest putting more seeds than you think you're going to need in each container, because you can always cull them. You can always take some out, the weaklings out. If you have too many, you can give them to friends. But always just plant a few more than you think you're going to need. It will give you growing tips, wonderful information. And then, of course, how to use this product is wonderful. Like, what do you use this for? Well, it's great for grilling, steaming, sauteing. So keep your seed packets. After you put your seeds into your containers, keep your seed packets so you can refer back to them. You'll really begin to understand how much valuable information is on this seed packet, all seed packets. So we have our containers, we filled them with soil, we have our seeds, we've watered them well. The soil is a consistency of maybe a wet brownie batter. What are we going to do with them now? Where are we going to put them? Well, you want to put them right outside. If it's the winter, you're going to put them right in the snow. I know that sounds crazy, but you do. You want them to be someplace in your yard where there's just a little protection from maybe animals and a lot of people movement, strong winds, but definitely want them out. Don't put them under the eaves of your house. That will prevent sun getting to them, and that will also prevent moisture from getting to them. So you want them exposed, and just put them, I like to put them close to where I'm going to grow them. So if I'm doing perennials for my front yard, I'm putting my cartons in my front yard. If I am starting vegetables, I tend to put those cartons in my vegetable garden so that they're where I want them to be when I'm ready to sow them. Caring for our containers. As I said before, there isn't a lot about caring for them. A couple things I'd like to make you aware of is that we would like to see this condensation on the top of the container. If you're using clear, it's very easy to see. This lets me know that there's enough moisture in here to keep it wet. Again, not soaked, but wet. You won't see the condensation as much in a milk carton. However, you will be able to peek and see if the soil is moist. Dry soil equals dead seeds, so do not let your soil dry out. When the days start to get warm, let's say in the 50s with a bright sun, it would be a good idea to open these up during the heat of the day to let some of the heat dissipate. The temperature inside of these containers can be up to 20 degrees warmer than the ambient air. So if it's 50 degrees outside, these could be already 70 degrees inside. And we don't want to cook them So if it's really warm out, bright sun, you just might want to open them up for a little while. But then before evening, close them back up because the temperatures are still cooling down at night. Transplanting is probably the most exciting time. You have your seeds, they've germinated. I am so excited. These are lupines that I planted in March. They've already got their second set of leaves. And it's one of my favorite plants I've been trying to grow for years. These are not ready to transplant outside for several reasons. One is that, first of all, it's still too cold outside. And two, I would like to let them get a lot higher. But it is just so exciting to see these guys. And again, I know they're lupines because it's number 5. And what is number 5 on my chart but lupines? So we're all set. I know what's in there. The best thing to do when transplanting is to go to where you are going to put these in the yard and prepare the soil first. Leave your plants in their container, no problem. But go and dig your holes, mix up the soil a little bit if you want to loosen it up. Get the soil all ready to go for your plant to be put into its location. If you are transplanting individual plants, maybe you're growing peas or beans or a tree or a shrub, and you're dealing with a single plant, you can just tease that plant out of here. You could even use a knife or something to just kind of loosen it so that you're not ripping the roots out. Sometimes we do what's called carpet sowing. So I'm growing microgreens at home. And those, I make an entire carpet of them because I don't need individual plants. And in that case, if I was going to transplant them, I would literally just cut out a piece of the carpet and I would take that piece and transplant that entire piece. Because trying to separate a simple little teeny tiny plant is just destructive to it. So transplanting is kind of the finale. It's exciting and it's very easy again, but prepare your soil before you move your plants. You don't want this little tiny seedling, even if it's 4 inches tall at this point, you don't want those roots exposed to the air while you are digging in the soil. You want that soil to be ready to take that plant the minute you pull it out of its winter sowing container. Winter sowing plants start out quite small. It's not what you're going to expect if you go to a nursery or a big box store and get, a 6-inch start. They start out small, but they are very, very strong. They have been grown outside. They've not been grown in a greenhouse. They've not been exposed to other chemicals or any kinds of growth regulators or enhancers. They're strong little seedlings. So we put them outside, water them in well. You want those roots to have good contact with the soil. Then you just monitor them. Now vegetables need to be watered quite frequently throughout the season, especially during dry periods. Our natives can adapt quite readily and only as a young plant will need to be watered quite frequently. I like to have a water gauge to see how much rain we're getting. Because some days it feels like we've gotten a lot and we've really gotten none. And other days it seems like we got nothing, and then I look and it's like, oh my gosh, we got a half of an inch. So watering gauges are a really inexpensive tool to have in your garden. So what to sow when? As I said, the hardier plants, the plants that are natives, trees and shrubs, any seed that says sow as early in the season as ground can be worked, sow late in the season, needs cold stratification. Those are all key words to say you can start me in December and January. Those seeds are ready for that cold, and that cold will help them germinate. As we get into the warmer months, such as February, which doesn't seem warmer, but it's warmer than January, we can start to begin with some of our hardy perennials and hardy natives. And then in March, we can move into our tender annuals, herbs and vegetables. And then by April, we can begin with our warm vegetables and warm season plants. There is a wonderful list that will get you started on wintersown.org, and that will give you a lot of good basic information. Let's go over seeds. So seeds can be gathered from so many different places. Obviously, you could purchase them at a store. You could collect your own from the year before or from friends. There are seed exchanges. Libraries now have seed libraries where you can take seeds out of the library. Or again, you can save your own. You could start vegetables, herbs, perennials and natives, annual flowers. It's just, the list is endless. Again, you can go to wintersown.org to get more information. I highly encourage you to try this. It is so rewarding. You may buy seed packets for as little as 50 cents. Actually, I just bought some yesterday. They were 50 cents a packet. So 50 cents plus a milk carton and a little bit of potting soil. Who could go wrong to have a pot full of plants in the spring? I hope that you will find this enjoyable to try and rewarding when you either eat your vegetables, your herbs, or enjoy your beautiful flowers. Thank you.